sponsored by our member SunTec, and a special warm welcome to Balagopal Ravibalan, who will share his insights on how loyalty management will benefit your organization. So Bala, could you please inform us more?
Thank you, Hans, and good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Balagopal Ravibalan. I'm a senior principal with SunTec, and SunTec as an organization,
everyone has ambitions.
Is the world's number one relationship-based pricing and billing company.
To do something fulfilling for society,
just a short
the
overview
environment,
on
the
what
world.
SunTec as
Help
an
your customers
organization
achieve
does.
their dreams with technology that is core to the journey. Go beyond transactions, build personal relationships, and deliver world-class service to fuel your customers' ambitions. We're SunTec, the world's number one relationship-based pricing and billing company. Count on our award-winning products to adopt a customer-first strategy and exponentially increase revenue. To learn more, visit www.suntechgroup.com.
And as an organization, we have been in the space of relationship-based pricing, billing, and loyalty management for almost 3 decades now. And we have worked with various institutions in the banking domain and the telecom and utilities and other domains for the last 3 decades. And we have seen how loyalty management programs have had a remarkable shift from what it was a few decades back, even a few years back, to where the market is currently going. But before I get into details of that, let me just play a quick game of Family Feud. If I were to play the role of Steve Harvey, and if I were to ask you, like I asked 100 people, what comes first to their mind when I mention loyalty or reward program, what would the answer be? What would the typical answer be? Now, some of the usual suspects are going to be airlines, hotel chains, for example, retail supermarket chains, maybe a Walmart or a Costco kind of chains, rental companies, and enterprise or a 60 companies that you frequently use from rental, either of cars or any other objects, for example. Or the worst case, if it comes to the financial sector, what would come to your mind typically are cards. Now, these are the popular top 5 responses that you would get from anyone if you inquire about a loyalty program. And I think all of us here today are members of at least one loyalty program from across these categories. So people who fly frequently are members of one or more airline program, loyalty programs, or members of a hotel loyalty program. So that's something that people who travel a lot are quite used to. But amongst all these responses, the one name you will not find is that of a bank. You will not find a bank or any bank being listed in the top 5 responses for this, which is a unique paradox, because if you look at it, our interaction as consumers, as customers, our interaction with the bank is a lot more frequent and is a lot more intensive than our interactions with, say, a hotel chain or a car rental company. Like, we do a lot of activities on a regular basis with banks, whether it be depositing cash, withdrawing cash across multiple channels, investments, savings, writing checks, for example, buying insurance, health, vehicle, life insurance, or loans of multiple formats, mortgages, car loans, working capital loans, across different channels that the bank provides to us, whether it be the brick and mortar branches or online banking channels. We have multiple interactions with the bank on a daily or a near daily basis, and that is true for most of us. We are lucky to be on both sides of the table here. We work with banks, we also are consumers of banking services, but yet we do not rate loyalty programs with banks that high as we would do with an airline loyalty or a hotel loyalty program. Why is that, and what is the reason behind that? So if I were to ask a more basic question, is loyalty important for banks? Do banks think that loyalty is something that they need to work upon, or loyalty is something that they need to invest in? Now, the answer to this question depends on when I ask this question. If I were to ask this question 10 or 15 years back, the typical response would be not really. I mean, for customers, especially customers in older generation, maybe our parents' generation, for example, build banking relationships for life. If they open an account with a particular bank, the rest of the banking relationship throughout their life actually came from that particular banking institution. And quite often, the reason why they chose a particular banking relationship was simply because of the proximity to the nearest brick and mortar branch. So that was the basis of deciding which bank you wanted to work with, and then staying with that bank lifelong. In fact, there is a saying that goes that people are more likely to leave their spouse or partners than their bank. I mean, I don't have empirical evidence for this, but this is a common saying that we heard quite often from a lot of banks when we discuss about loyalty programs with them. Now, this was as of yesterday. This was at a time when banks had a niche of their own. Banks knew that customers were loyal to them and customers wouldn't move out that much. So banks were confident in the customer loyalty. But if I were to come to today, the situation is quite different. In today's world, we have a highly competitive banking market. We are not just looking at the traditional banking players. We are not just looking at the large banks or even just banks. We are looking at a lot of new age players coming into the space, non-banking entities. We have new banks, digital banks, niche banks who are coming into the space and attracting customers with multiple proposition. And the way we use banking services has also undergone a lot of change. I'm sure, I mean, even in pre-COVID times, we were not regular visitors of the branch as a consumer. I'm sure if I ask someone when was the last time they went to a branch, 95% of you would say before COVID. It's like almost 2 years back. But even then, our visits to the branches were less frequent. We were able to do most things through digital channels, through contactless banking. And the location of a particular bank's branch did not really dictate our relationship with them or our working with them. And this gets even worse when we talk about the millennial generation who tend to gravitate towards whichever bank offers them the best deal at this given point of time. Whatever is their need right now, whatever is the instant gratification that they're looking for. If a financial institution provides that, they gravitate towards that. Tomorrow, they are not. They don't hesitate in dropping that like hot potato and moving to the next kid on the block. So that's something that we see a generational shift in entire thinking of the customer when it comes to sticking to a bank, when it comes to loyalty towards a bank. And for this, I do have empirical evidence. So as of 2020, this is just about when the pandemic was started, there were about 44 million people in US alone who were considering leaving the old bank and moving to a new financial institution. So this number would just increase with the pandemic spreading out, and also with the younger generation occupying a majority of the banking space. This number is just going to increase. So now the question comes: how do I get customer loyalty? How do I get loyal customers who are satisfied customers, who are customers that I can retain? So that becomes a question for banks to answer. But before we answer that, the important question is, what is ailing loyalty programs within banks? What are the issues that you typically see with loyalty programs that banks currently have? Now, one of the stats basically say that it is a market where almost $100 billion worth of loyalty points go unused every year. Now, there's multiple reasons for this. And if you were to drill down into some of the top reasons why banks' loyalty programs typically fail, one key aspect, this is true for many banks across the world, is product-centric loyalty programs. The loyalty programs are designed with a particular product in mind. It could be a cards program, it could be linked to maybe deposits or insurance. The loyalty programs are designed around a product. We are looking still at product-centric design, even though the other parts of the bank, other areas in the bank have moved towards customer-centric designs and options. Loyalty programs tend to be limited to a product. Most banks that we interact with have loyalty programs that are primarily focused around the cards operation. But when you would expand these loyalty programs, the typical problems that you face is banks' inability to measure the return of investment on such a program. They're not able to measure customer loyalty and profitability because it's not a direct measurement. There are indirect factors that come into play. And banks today are not equipped to really measure how the profitability and revenue is affected by improving the loyalty program. So that's from a bank's perspective. Now, if I were to talk to customers of the banks, the biggest stumbling block, I think most of us have faced this, is the ability to redeem points quickly. Any bank and most banks that we work with typically have a very cumbersome process on redeeming reward points that you might have. So there either has a fixed catalog or there is an entire manual process where you've got to submit an email, or there are cases where I need to submit a physical letter to a bank in order to redeem my points, or the real-time options are primarily limited to paying off bills or charges within the bank. So the options, the avenues for me to redeem reward points seamlessly is very limited when it comes to current loyalty solutions in the bank. Now, this also gets worse when you look at the partner ecosystem. So most banks have a very limited closed partner ecosystem, and my options to earn and redeem are limited to that. There are banks that provide the option for you to pay through points. You swipe your card and you have an option whether to pay through cash or pay through points. But if you drill down to it, it is quite limited. It is only possible in POS machines that are linked to the bank, and these are from a limited cards based offering. If you don't have a card, you don't get such options. And if you look at the generation, the consumers today, you're looking at consumers who are going for non-card based interactions, more and more BNPL based interactions, or smartphone based interactions. So most of us now use our card, our mobile phone to do QR based payments, for example, like a Prompt Pay or the UPI in India, for example. These are actions happening outside the card network, and as a result, it is not something that can come in as part of the bank's traditional loyalty programs. So we see a lot of users, now preferring to use an aggregator or preferring to use a wallet-based app to make such payments because it is more intuitive. It gives you a lot more benefit. Personally, I can take the example of an app called Cred in India, which is a credit cards aggregator, which helps you track credit card payments and helps you pay that using a direct UPI interface with my bank accounts. And I'm using that more than I use my online banking or mobile banking. And I realized that I don't log into my online banking that frequently. When you said online banking killed branch banking, so you have these aggregators and wallets who are actually now killing online mobile banking. So we see that the customers' usage patterns have changed. It is not really linked to cards, which is the basis for most loyalty programs. And we are missing a huge opportunity in capturing customer activities and tracking customer activities and behavior, incentivizing that, or being able to modify customer behaviors based on these patterns. So what can banks do differently? I mean, if you look at what banks have been doing traditionally, most banks have loyalty programs. But what is it that they can do differently? So one of the key aspects is to create this next generation loyalty program, which is pervasive, which is seamless, which is contextual and rewarding. Now, these are some keywords that require certain changes in the way a bank looks at a loyalty program, a financial institution looks at a loyalty program. One interesting aspect, now this is something that's food for thought, is to treat loyalty points as a pseudo digital currency. So if you look at it, if I can convert my loyalty points into a pseudo currency, something that I can use with the same ease as I use cash, like across a wide network, that is something that will entice a lot of customers. That shows me value for the rewards that I'm able to garner from a bank. As of today, if you look at the customers today, most customers who do enroll for loyalty programs in banks, 90% of them would transfer those points to an airline or a hotel loyalty program partner and actually redeem the awards out there. So that's typically how customers tend to redeem the awards, because the options available within a bank are quite limited. But if I were to kind of expand this, create an open system where I'm able to seamlessly earn and redeem rewards across a wide network of partners with the same ease as cash, that makes it more interesting, that makes it more appealing for the younger generation, newer generation that are coming into banks and that are less sticky to their primary banking providers. And this open system in general can also be interoperable system. So we are looking at, if I can look at example of an airline alliance, for example, I'm able to use miles from one airline in other airline to book tickets with another airline, to get award tickets in another airline within an alliance of some sort. Something of that nature needs to come into the banking space, where we're able to create this larger network, larger pool of opportunities when it comes to redeeming or earning rewards. So that requires a fundamental shift in the way loyalty programs are seen. It's quite often a very closed program which looks inward, which looks more into the bank's products and a limited set of bank's partners. We need to kind of open that up, be able to see a more open system, a more open network, where we are able to seamlessly use reward points or the reward system in lieu of cash. This could potentially be a stepping stone for a lot of banks to actually get into the cryptocurrency or digital currency space, where your loyalty points in effect become a pseudo currency. We do have some banks which actually denote the points as dollars. It's like some brand name and dollars. So they do try to treat it on par with the actual currency. But then, because of the limited options available to use it, limited options available to spend it, the uptake has not been very high. It's primarily because we lack an open interoperable system across multiple partners in an open ecosystem. And to enable this, what we require are real-time APIs, real-time standardized APIs that can be used between different parties in this loyalty ecosystem. So what we have today is every provider has their own set of APIs. Every bank has its own set of APIs. Those who do have APIs have limited set of APIs. Quite often, for a lot of the banks, it is not a real-time process. You need to send a request. It has to be processed, the points redeemed, and then you get the benefit back. There is a lag time between when you request and when you actually get it. So the banks that do have APIs have their own specifications. It's all over the place. And for a partner, as a partner, for me to integrate with each loyalty program across multiple banks becomes a costly affair. And there is a lot of overhead in maintaining this different interfaces. So a standardized real-time API is something that will be the building block to actually coming out with an open loyalty ecosystem that is interoperable and that works in sort of like a cryptocurrency equivalent framework. So these are thoughts. I mean, these are not things that are very popular today. There are some banks who are trying to do this, but in the future, going into the future, these are things that would become de rigueur, that would be necessary if banks really want to stand out, if loyalty being a point of differentiation for banks in the future. How can BIAN help with this? And this is what banks can do, but how can BIAN help with this? So one of the key aspects is around standardizing this multi-party interactions. So as I mentioned earlier, there are multiple parties involved in the entire loyalty ecosystem. You have the loyalty program owner, which is typically the bank that owns the customer and owns the loyalty program. There are earning partners, there are redemption partners, there are aggregators that come into play. So bank doesn't have to have a partnership with all these different partners. They're able to go through an aggregator and the customer. So in order to have a seamless experience across these parties, standardized multi-party interactions is required. BIAN has been taken initial steps on defining this, but a lot of the standards defined today are more internal facing. It's around earning of points and redeeming points within the organization. It does not take into account a multi-partner ecosystem where you have different parties interacting in the entire life cycle of the loyalty program. So that's something that will become key, especially if you wish to have, like if I could just go to Starbucks and use my loyalty programs from the bank to pay for my drink, right? So to do that across multiple banks, integrating with Starbucks, a standardized interaction mechanism makes life easier for all the parties involved. And to enable such an interaction, we would also need to have an interoperable framework. It could be very similar to the distributed ledger, it could be blockchain equivalent, which can ensure that the interactions that happen with these various parties are secure and trusted. Right, so there are multiple parties involved in these transactions, and we would need to ensure that whatever interactions happen, whether it is an earning, redemption, any inquiries, or the entire reconciliation around that happens in a seamless manner. It is secure and it's trusted. So the principles of distributed ledger or blockchain is something that we can use for this purpose. Again, food for thought here. And last but not the least, this actually goes beyond financial institution. When we're talking about standards when it comes to earning loyalty points or redeeming loyalty points, that actually go beyond a financial institution. Bank can partner up with the Starbucks, with the McDonald's, with the retail chain, with airlines, hotels. So they are all parties within this loyalty ecosystem. And for them to actually comply to a particular standard, for them to have a particular standard defined that they can use to interact with the various financial institutions and other parties in the ecosystem will go a long way in creating an open multi-party loyalty ecosystem that will appeal to customers, that will enable banks to create yet another loyal base of customers who are satisfied and customers that they're able to retain, right? So that's it from my side, and I hope this was useful. This gave you some food for thought. I would like to thank you all for attending this session. Thank you and have a good day.